So Ashley, thanks for being willing to talk to me today about Canlock. Now, before I mentioned it, had you ever heard of Canlock?
No, I have not.
What came to mind, like what were your expectations of what Canlock was before you received
I
it?
I pretty much did expect it to be either some sort of I figured it was going to be a container, and with the word lock in it, I just didn't know if it was going to be some sort of child-proof lock. That's just that was the assumption going on.
And how do you currently store your weed? What are you using?
We typically just leave it in the jars or in the bags that it comes in from the dispensaries, but unfortunately, some of the dispensaries do sell them in the baggies still, and that's when we tend to put them in the actual jar.
Okay. What jars do you use? Like just any jar?
Pretty much, like I have one sitting right here. They typically come
You.
already packaged like this.
Mhm.
But as you can see, it's not like you can easily remove the seal, and it's just a screw-on cap. There's not really any sort of oxygen saving technique to it.
So tell me what you liked, then we'll talk about what you didn't like when you took a look at the Canlock. Did you experiment with it at all?
Yeah, I really like the fact that yeah, it was easy, pretty self-explanatory. You just open it up and put your weed in it and then close it back up and press the button a few times in order to get some of that extra air out of there. And honestly, I felt like the weed was kept a lot more fresh inside of it. We put like some really moist stuff inside of it, and it stayed moist a little bit longer than what it did in just a regular jar from the dispensary.
Did you have anything that you didn't like or you felt could be improved about the product?
Not really necessarily. I like the fact that it was still somewhat child proof, to where if for some reason somebody wasn't storing their weed correctly and a child were to get a hold of it, they wouldn't be able to easily access it. So that is what I did personally like about it a lot. And just the fact that it kept it nice and fresh.
Now, as a bud tender, if you were trying to communicate the benefits of this to one of your customers, what would you tell them?
Uh, that would definitely, what I just said before about the two aspects of it being like child safe and keeping your stuff nice and fresh. That would be two huge aspects that I would use, because we do have a lot of parents that come in and use, and I personally don't know how they store them at home, but we all like to think that they're doing the responsible thing and keeping them away from their kids. But like I said, kids get into everything, and so it's always that extra precautionary measure to have that uh, extra lock on there.
And what about the smell proofness of that? Was that a compelling benefit for you?
It was, for me personally, I don't have kids or really anybody that is bothered by cannabis in my household. So personally, that wasn't really affected too much. But if and we don't really travel with it very often either. But having it at home, I did notice that it wasn't stinking up as much.
Mm-hmm. And do you tend to have more than one type of bud, like that you're using at any one time? Like did you use all three containers, or do you just pretty much do one at a time?
Well, we did end up using both of them at the same time, and all three of them at the same time.
Mm-hmm. How did you keep track of what was in what? Or could you just tell from the clear, looking at it?
There were two different strains that we could definitely tell the difference, just because the one strain was like a darker purple. We already knew what kind that was. But the other two, I did have to draw just like a little star. I guess that could be something that you could add to it, is just some sort of label or a marker, an easy erasable marker that you
Mm-hmm.
could write the strain on there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other suggestions for things that you would want to see done differently with the product?
Um, it Lights are always fun. I always suggest lights. That would be something cool if you could if they could add some sort of little button to it, just so that you can see it a little bit better, especially at nighttime, or just to show off the crystals inside of it too.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Let's see. So if you were encouraging your inventory manager, your buyer, to purchase it, how would you explain to them what you think matters most? Is that different than what matters to you and consumers, or is it kind of the same thing?
I would feel that, well, I personally don't have children, but at the same time, I take into aspect of the fact that a lot of my customers do have children, and that smell proof aspect of it is very important. Both the smell proof and the child proof lock on there are both very important aspects to the product. So those would definitely be the top two things that I would tell my buyer. Like, we need something to provide our customers to be able to take home, to put their stuff into a safe container so that they can throw away the not safe container. You know what I'm saying?
What kind of containers do the weed that you're buying currently come in? What does the flower come in? Like, is it just typical little jars, or is there anything innovative about the ones you buy?
The ones that we get at the dispensaries typically are just the little jars, or like the really like plastic. They're plastic, just they remind me of pill containers that you get from the pharmacy. They're just simple plastic. I mean, there's still the childproof lock, but you can't see into it. They're all black, which I think that was one of the aspects of it, was to make it all black so that nobody knew what was inside of it. But at the same time, like, then you don't know what's inside of it. And I don't know, I was one of those kids that if it was fully black like that, I shook it around. I tried breaking it open until I knew what was inside of it, rather than having it be clear and saying like, oh, it's not for me, and just leaving it alone.
So it sounds like you like the clear as opposed to the colored.
Yeah, personally.
Okay. And is freshness something that's important to the kind of customers that typically come in? I mean, I know you have some customers that are like cheapest, high, lowest price, whatever, but do you have customers that care about quality and freshness?
Oh, yes. I do have people that'll ask me, can you check the harvest date of the flower? And because technically inside the dispensaries, state regulations, everything has to have the harvest date, when it was packaged and when it was sold to the dispensary. And so our customers will sometimes ask, can you check the harvest date and see exactly when it was like harvested? Because some of our strains, they will have already been sitting there for a month or two, where they were just harvested maybe a week or two ago.
And so do they look at the difference between the harvest date, the packaging date, the fresh, use by date? What are the dates that matter to them?
I would say definitely just the harvest date is the biggest, just so that they know exactly when the flower was trimmed right off of the branch, and how long it actually took for it to get to the dispensary, and how long it's kind of been sitting on the shelf for.
What are people looking for? Like, is it, a week, a month, 3 months? What's a reasonable harvest date?
I'm pretty sure that technically our law here in Vegas is that we can't have anything sitting on the products or sitting on the shelf for more than 6 months. So people try and definitely, I have people try and make it like within a month or two range of harvest date. Otherwise, if it's like 2 or 3 months after that, they have a weird look on their face and ask, like, you got anything else?
Do people ever come back and say, hey, this was old or dry? Like, do you ever get complaints about that issue?
Yes, very much. Unfortunately, living in Las Vegas and being in Las Vegas, with the flower that's grown here, not saying that it's all dry, but for some reason, when it does reach the dispensaries, it is a little bit on the drier level. Like you can break it apart really easy with your fingers. You don't even need a grinder. And some people do like that. Like my boyfriend, he likes it when it's easy to grind up like that. Me personally, I like being able to use a grinder and seeing how fresh it is and smelling it and just taking in the aroma and the freshness of the flower. But honestly, I personally don't mind either way, but if I had to personally choose, I'd prefer the fresher stuff.
Yeah, got it. Do you sell any accessories in your store?
We sell like chillums. They're just these little glass tubes where the very, very tip, you just load your bud into it and it looks like a little glass cigarette and you use it just like one. We sell those, and then we also sell vape batteries. We sell like 3 or 4 different kinds of vape batteries, like the Moxie, our own, and then there's also a thing called like a pocket rig where, I don't know, it's too expensive for what it really does.
Well, I was going to ask you about the price point. Does this seem like, let's say it's like $18 for the small one and maybe $25 for the bigger one. Does that seem reasonable as an item to carry in your type of store?
Yeah, I would definitely see people still purchasing something that's between $18 to $25 for smoking accessory wise. We did have some dab rigs inside there, but they were at about $100 each, and they were not selling at all. They were on the shelves for like over a year. But we do get the bongs. We have people asking. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just wondering if you think this would sell if it was plain, or because you're in Las Vegas, would it have like the store name or something like that that was specific to the store, or do you like to keep it kind of on the down low and have it just be subtle and unbranded?
I would say I do get a decent amount of people that do like the branding. A lot of the people though definitely like the sports aspects, like Vegas Knights, because they won the hockey championship, I believe it was the other year, and so a lot of people are into that, or just like Las Vegas in general, the whole Vegas Strong, a lot of supporters on that. So if anything were to say Vegas Strong on it, I definitely know people would be up for that.
Okay. Do they have a logo, or is it just the words Vegas Strong?
I believe that it's just the words Vegas Strong. I'm not sure if there really is a trademarked or copyrighted logo for it or not.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering. Where would you sell in the store? Like, where would you see this being placed?
We do have at Showgrow 2 different merchandise walls. Well, technically 3, but our 3rd one is more for our clothing that we have, like our t-shirts, bikinis and stuff. But the other 2, I could definitely see something being up on there, but it would have to be a little bit smaller just because it is no, never mind. No, they have a shelf that they could fit a decent size, like foot long something on there.
Now, as a budtender who makes recommendations, does this seem like a product that you would want to recommend to a certain type of clientele?
Like the Canlock?
Yeah, the Canlock, sorry.
No, you're okay. Yes, I would highly recommend, especially for, well, I guess I don't want to say traveling wise, but at the same time, like maybe just going over to your friend's house or something like that. You're taking it to another private residence that you're able to legally smoke your cannabis at. And
did you put any joints in there, or were you just using it for the flower itself?
I thought about putting a joint in there, but I ended up smoking it.
I respect that. Totally respect that.
But we did put a bunch of our bud in there that we got from the dispensary, and then that ended up helping a lot. And personally, what I like to use for some of the dry weed here, that's what I tell people when they start complaining about the dry weed around here. Take a tortilla, just a flour tortilla shell from the store, and tear a little chunk off and stick it in your jar and just leave it for a few hours, and the moisture from the tortilla will go into your bud. And like, I don't like suggesting like orange peels. Sometimes people will say do that with an orange peel, but sometimes that'll tend to make it too moist and mold will start building up, where that little tortilla chunk just has a tiny bit of moisture in it. And so I don't know if there would be a way to maybe make some sort of product that could replicate the flour tortilla effect, where it's just a tiny little bit of moisture added into there where it won't cause any mold.
Mm-hmm. I gotta ask, how did someone come up with a fresh tortilla as a means by which to add moisture into dry flour?
I heard it from my first dispensary job here in Vegas, because I had somebody yelling in my face about how dry their weed was. And I'm like, bro, this is my first day on the job. Like, I don't know why it's dry. And then my coworker told me like exactly that. And then I tried it out for myself. And that's just what I do from now on whenever I encounter super dry bud. But honestly, I'm not really that picky either.
So, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, but in terms of how much product a dispensary buys to keep an inventory in the back, this product happens to sell in boxes of either 50 or 100 at a time. Does your store have enough momentum that they would buy 50 or even 100 at a time, or is that unrealistic?
I could see them buying maybe 50 at a time, but it might take about a year or so to sell those 50.
Okay.
Compared,
And why is
I'm
that?
sorry.
Oh, yeah, I
Oh,
was wondering why you think it would take so long.
and exactly what I was gonna say, that just because Showgrow, the dispensary that I'm at, is farther away from the Las Vegas Strip, where it's more of the locals, and maybe it might apply or appeal to the locals a little bit more for saving their weed, but maybe towards the Strip a little bit more, it might be easier for somebody to sell, just to explain to them the whole aspect of being a smell proof and walk around with it being smell proof and everything like that.
Okay, well, now we're going to take a quick look at some websites rather. So, okay, so this is the website. What are your reactions to this visually?
It's easy to read. Pretty self-explanatory.
What is your, I'm just getting your opinions on the broccoli inside. Did that make sense to you?
Oh yeah, yep.
Okay, just making sure. Do you think that it would to to regular consumers, or is it more something that would just make sense to someone in the industry?
I honestly just because of the general public, you would need to make that like into flour or something. Definitely the latter half of that only the industry people would really know that you don't put broccoli in there.
Okay. And this one, the mini happens to be sold out, but I'm curious what you think of this visual on the far right.
That's a really nice picture. I really like that.
What does that communicate to you?
That almost makes me think of moon rocks inside the container, but like classy moon rocks.
Okay. And let's see, what else do I want to show you on this page? And preservation, is that something that you got educated about, preservation of cannabis?
Not necessarily, and that should be something that should be taught to all of us on how to really properly store your cannabis. The only thing that we've really gotten somewhat educated on is concentrates, like live resin, and how you're really supposed to be storing that inside a refrigerator. But other than that, they don't really get into how to properly store your cannabis.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now we're gonna look at another website. There's a corporate website and there's a consumer website. So this one shows it in action. Does that does this page with the different capacities, make sense to you? How what it's intended for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why do you think that they have weed in one and broccoli in another? And like, was the broccoli like a fun kind of homage to the, like, or was it confusing, is I guess what I want to know.
It wasn't confusing. It was funny. I found it kind of funny. But I just then also kind of assume that it is going to be a company that is probably maybe located in a state that is still fully either still fully illegal or only medicinally cannabis legal.
Got it. Okay, and now I just want to take a quick look. I want to be sensitive to your time, but I want to look at the Instagram page. What is the role of Instagram for you as a bud tender in terms of getting to know about products?
I personally really like looking at Instagram just because I don't have Facebook or any of the other things. I just only have Instagram and Snapchat. And so this is where I do most of my social media networking. And so I like seeing whatever can pop up on Instagram. I like applying it to my stories, like with what you're showing me here. Which design should we print and vote with emoji? Like, I feel like people would totally jump on board with that.
So which one, what would you, if you were going to be carrying something in store, which one would be first, second, and third in terms of best sellers, do you think?
I personally, well, I feel like that rainbow one would definitely, I don't know, that would catch some eyes. I think a lot of people would purchase that one just because it's rainbow, it's Vegas. Vegas is all about pride, and like Pride Month's coming up too. And so that one would be a big hit. The camo one, maybe. People are really into designs and stuff around here. The camo one's a cool one, but otherwise, I would say probably maybe the black one too, just because personally I was told that the darker the glass, the better preservation for your cannabis. And that's why I would just go with the darker glass. But can you still see through that black glass?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think it'd be too dark to see through.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if it was just like tinted enough to where you can still at least see a little bit of what was inside the jar, that'd be cool.
Okay. Any other feedback you have before we wrap up? I really appreciate your input on this.
Yeah, no problem. Just to go along with maybe possibly adding a light, I was thinking about it too. Maybe adding some sort of maybe a magnifying glass, like just a little tiny circle magnifying glass somewhere on the bottom there, to where you could check out your own weed a little bit closer too.
Like on the bottom of the glass, be able to see it? Is that what you're thinking, or on the side?
Either one. I've seen jars where the very bottom is a magnifying glass, but also I feel like I like it on the side, just so that you can still have a little bit of room to look at it.
Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.